got an ugly-ass record as it is. It's not like I got to protect the damn thing. It's a powerful thing knowing you can pick yourself back up. That is what allows me to take a lot of risks that a lot of other guys aren't willing to take. And with that, we're going to early Stoppage show with the news of the day. Usually give it just enough time, but sometimes not enough. If this is your first time stopping by, we thank you and get ready for something you won't find anywhere else. I'm John Franklin. I'm joined by the God, father of Fight Night Picks from the Canada, Craig Allen. Craig, how are you?
John, it's freezing cold up here, man. It sucks. It's cold. We've been getting snow that we didn't even know we were going to get. We're supposed to get 5 centimeters the other night. We got like 15 or 20. So I don't know what that equates to in inches. We probably got like 4 to 6 inches of snow, like out of nowhere. So it's been good. And if you're playing along at home, you'll notice that my computer continues to shift a little bit more every episode. So now you can see a little bit more of the background. We get the Hoist Gracie flag there. We get the trophy that I now own for my 6-6 pick'em record from last week. You saw me pop in and out of the recap show, showing that puppy off. But listen, I'm looking forward to this weekend. There's some great fights. I know we're going to talk about them. I'm super fired up. It's a great time to be an MMA fan. And hey,
it is a great.
Let me say this one more thing, John. If you're an MMA fan, don't find a fighter's number and call them and then put the FaceTime video out for everybody to see. How about that?
We should talk about that, but we'll get to it. Craig, on this episode of Early Stoppage, we talk short notice Belal, Super Sage, and the King of Cringe. But we begin with the heavyweight division of the UFC. Craig, the UFC's heavyweight division may be the most intriguing division of all of MMA. The heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic just completed a trilogy with a Hall of Fame foe in Daniel Cormier and is about to rematch number one contender Francis Ngannou. Derek Lewis just KO'd Curtis Blades in a top 5 main event. We just saw a couple of high-level prospects have good performances in Chris Daukaus and Tom Aspinall. And Ciryl Gane and jairzinho rozenstruik are the main event this weekend. And oh yeah, arguably the greatest fighter of all time has vacated his belt and is putting on weight as we speak. So Craig, is this the best the UFC division, the UFC heavyweight division has ever been?
So when I get into MMA the first time, you still had Randy Couture kind of kicking around. Brock Lesnar was coming in. Like, things were exciting. You had Alistair Overeem making the transition from Strikeforce. Like, people were excited about the heavyweight division. I left MMA for some time. I came back. And when I came back in like 2016, 2017, Curtis Blades was the new toy. Francis Ngannou was new to the division. Like, we had some other prospects, but they weren't very good. I mean, think back to that time. Who was there, John? Chase Sherman was new. People were excited about him. Ciryl Asker. Like, there wasn't a whole lot. What? Junior Albini? People weren't getting all that excited about heavyweight. But I look at the prospects that we have now. Tanner Boser, Ciryl Gane, Tom Aspinall, Chris Daukaus, and the list just keeps going, and it's a long list. There's really good heavyweights all over the place. One championship. Are they going to have a heavyweight Grand Prix? Bellator's heavyweight division, it's pretty good. But focusing on the UFC right now, it's great. And you can get excited about these guys because look at the position that Chris Daukaus was in. I mean, Alexei Oleinik had him. He was trying to grapple with him up against the fence, and Daukaus got out of it fairly easily and punched him too many times for my liking. And then you look at Tom Aspinall. Well, geez, he gets cracked on the feet by Alistair Overeem Andre Arlovsky after he almost knocks Arlovsky out. And then in the second round, it's just nonchalant. I'm going to back this old up. I'm going to drop him, and then I'm going to submit him. It's awesome stuff to see in this division. So awesome that I have to bleep myself. I love it. I'm excited about it. I'm sure there's been other times, like I said, with the Lesnars, with the Mark Kerrs of the world, when it was exciting to be a heavyweight MMA fan. But right now, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think we got to see what we end up having with these guys. They all look great now. But, you know, I think there was a time, like you said, there's Brock Lesnar's time in the UFC brought about a lot of guys. Like you said, he got over him at the end. Kane was in there. Junior was in there. Shane Carwin was in there. Frank Mir was in there. If I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize.
Crocop, Gonzaga.
Duffy. Listen, this division has had its names. I don't think at one time, though, we had it where it was like it seemed like everybody was in their prime with nobody on the shelf, nobody really ready to go.
Give her over here, bud. Here's the big fight that's coming up that nobody's focusing on. John Franklin, this is a carryover from my time with another network doing shows. What about the fight that was just announced? And we're talking heavyweight prospects. We even forgot to mention them. Alexandr Romanov. How awesome is that guy? Did you see who he's fighting coming up?
Tell me.
My guy, Juan Espino. Where are you at, Juan? Juan Espino's fighting Romanov. So, yeah, I mean, whether you're a 39 or 40-year-old prospect in the division or you're Alexander Romanov, like, yeah, it's so exciting. And these guys are going to be around for a long time with the exception of my boy Juan.
Let me ask a follow-up question to this because, I used to be a journalist once upon a time. Now I just do podcasts.
Me too.
Do you think with Jon Jones coming in, he's almost like, we did all that talking about this division, didn't even hardly mention him. Do you think that this division is poised for him to go on a run like he did when he came into light heavyweight, where he went through Shogun and Machida and like all those guys? Do you think if he now factor in that he's going up in weight, if he came up to heavyweight and ran through everybody, right, beats the winner of Stipe and Ngannou, ultimately defeats the loser, right? Gane, Rozenstruik, Lewis, just goes through all these guys. Aspinall comes of age, Daukaus comes of age, and then he fights them. Is that more impressive than that light heavyweight run?
But I think of that light heavyweight run, and we look at it now too. It'd be like the way that Jones cleaned out light heavyweight at the end. You beat Dominick Reyes, you beat Thiago Santos. You're beating these guys that, yeah, there's some shine with them, there's some allure, but did they have championship gold around their waist? Well, maybe with some regional promotions, but when you're beating Shogun, Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, like you're beating names that had value associated with them. Not to say that these heavyweights don't, but if you just go out there and you start cleaning it out, like for me, for Jon Jones to gain a lot with maybe even the casual fan, you have to beat Overeem. You have to beat JDS. Like you still have to have some of those names on your record. Do I think he should go all the way down to like an Arlovsky and build his way up? No, he's earned it on merit that he can fight up near the top. But if he beats Miocic, if he beats an Ngannou of Blades, once we start to go down the list, it's great, but I don't think it continues to add as much shine as that early run that Jones had. And let's not forget, Jones at the end of the light heavyweight run, was there gas in the tank or are we running on fumes? Because those fights are starting to get close. So I think he's going to have his hands full at heavyweight. But maybe, at 250 pounds, like we had in that thumbnail where he looked great, maybe this is a totally reinvented Jones and he's going to have a second wind at heavyweight. I don't know. Really quick, because we're going to do this later. If you had to I'm a teacher, so if you had to give this division a letter grade, how you feeling about it? Heavyweight, I'd say B+ with some potential. I think that's fair. All right. So, John, let's talk about 170 pounds. 2 weeks ago, Kamaru Usman fought Gilbert Burns. And in the 3 rounds, it reminded us and the entire world why he was the undisputed champion of that division. In the week since, Usman has faced the GSP comparison. And it's because of the welterweight win streak thing and some talk about moving up to 185 pounds. So, John, I ask you this. Has Kamaru Usman totally cleaned out the division? And is he the GOAT of the division? What's next for him here? There's a lot to unpack with Kamaru Usman. I don't think he's the GOAT yet. Obviously the quick, and I don't even think it's fair to have that discussion, so I won't have it, meaning I don't think it's fair that people are bringing it up. Just because him and GSP were tied for the winning streak record, obviously GSP's were title fights, Kamaru's weren't. So I think it's unfair of him to even bring it up. But if you look at the division and you talk about who he hasn't fought, right? He'll tell you that, and obviously Wonderboy Thompson is working on a fight based on this premise, which is he's pretty much beaten everybody except for Wonderboy Thompson, right? Different stages of their career. Obviously, I don't think he's beat Chiesa, but he beat Edwards early, beat Burns, beat Covington, beat Masvidal, like all the big names in the division, he's beaten. So from that perspective, yeah, he's cleaned it out. Meaning, if he left the division now, I wouldn't say he left it with unfinished business. Right, whereas Jones kind of did, right? Jones had a Reyes rematch, never fought Blachowicz. So if he left now, he has less unfinished business than other guys who have left their division. So to me, I look at the welterweight division, and I know we're going to talk about Khamzat Chimaev today, but there's Khamzat out there. There's a reinvented Edwards. Covington's probably going to bring some new tools that he's learned from MMA Masters if they fight. But you're right, Chiesa, Thompson, Magny. And the guy that I think of is Vicente Luque. I keep thinking in my mind, well, if Vicente beats Tyron Woodley, then who does he fight? Maybe a Chiesa. I'd be down for that fight. Maybe I think stylistically the best matchup, Jorge Masvidal, Vicente Luque. That fight sells 8 days to Sunday. It sells every single day. You love it. You can't have enough of it. But Vicente Luque is basically like, a wilder Gilbert Burns. So I don't see Vicente beating Kamaru Usman. I think the GOAT talk, you're right. It's a little difficult to have that conversation because you look at GSP, Koscheck, Hughes, Sarah, Fitch, Penn, Alves, Hardy, Koscheck, Shields, Condit, Diaz, Hendricks, and then Bisping up a weight class. It's hard to kind of compare those two guys, especially with the title fights too. So for Usman, I think you just keep doing your thing. But what does he have to do to win people over? Because that was a conversation that I kept seeing pop up in the comments section. Well, you guys pick Gilbert Burns because you don't like Kamaru Usman. Don't get it twisted. We said that people don't like Kamaru Usman. We didn't pick him because we don't like him. There was just that little opportunity for Burns to crack him. He did it in the first round and it didn't work out for him. But that's kind of how we saw that fight. But for a lot of people, they just don't like Kamaru Usman's personality. So what does a guy have to do? Just keep winning? Because I think maybe winning might solve it, but you never know.
Yeah, he's in this weird spot where he's, sometimes you can steer into your cockiness and your arrogance or confidence. I don't want to label Kamaru Usman as cocky or arrogant, but like sometimes you steer into it and you have a personality and that's marketable. But forever, people have been telling Kamaru Usman he isn't as good as he says he is. Well, now he's proving that he is. And you're still not with the guy. Like, you're still not.
Yeah.
He is who he said he was, right? To borrow a Dennis Green phrase. I just think that it's unfair. Listen, it's unfair, the standard that Kamaru Usman is being held to. But at the same time, you don't get to just say, hey, this guy should have the it factor because he checks a bunch of boxes. He doesn't check the intangible or the wild card box. People don't like the guy. And the choice that he has is one of two things. He can either go full heel and be an anti-hero and gain some traction that way, like Floyd Mayweather did. Or he can continue to be who he is and just let the chips fall where they may. I will always side on the side of authenticity. So whatever he is authentically, that's what he should be, because people will resonate. That will resonate more with them. He doesn't have to hide his gimmick like Kobe Covington does. So I would say to stick to his guns, and maybe they'll come around, but it might take a minute.
I'm kind of a weird, you take it from a journalistic approach, from a podcaster approach. At the end of the day, we're all watching the same fight. You got to be a bit of a fan at the same time, right? I like Kamaru Usman for who he is, his story. We've seen those commercials kind of played out here the last month or so about his story, but I think it's great. And I love to listen to him talk. I mean, he was on JRE there a year ago, and Joe Rogan couldn't say enough good things about that podcast that they had a year ago at Kamaru's last fight when he fought Gilbert Burns. But I like him. I think he's great. So it's just a shame that, not enough people see how great of a fighter he is and how much he's kind of overcame in his own personal life. And it's just, they're just focused on, one aspect. Oh, well, the guy's boring. Well, you watch his fights. They're pretty exciting. Unless he fights in a mode where he has to win, like he did against Masvidal, and I understand that too. But for me, I hope he just continues to win and continue to kind of rub it in the faces of the haters.
One of the things that doesn't get talked about as much as it should is how much Usman and GSP are alike, in the sense that they're hugely disciplined guys. They are hugely technical and GSP has been described as boring. Trust me, I can rattle off, 30 casual people I used to watch GSP fights with that said as much, right? I don't want to watch GSP fights. They're boring. So I think that, again, sometimes you can't figure out what the narrative is that it's going to take to make you popular or famous. For example, Kamaru Usman, by all accounts, is an amazing dad. Well, Cowboy got a lot of, acclaim for being a great dad, but it was after he was this wild man. Everyone's like, oh, Cowboy's settling down. He has a kid now. And that was the story, right? They haven't quite figured out yet how to tell Kamaru Usman's story in a way that will make him hugely marketable. All right, Craig, let's move on. Craig, also on that card, Belal Muhammad got a unanimous decision victory over Diego Lima. However, it seems the only person who could have predicted that victory transitioning Muhammad into a high-profile fight was the Prophet John Anik, who said as much on his podcast. Real quick, Swerve, just a little thought, something, a little seed to plant with the audience. Is there any chance that Anik is like Vince McMahon was in the early days of WWE, where he's like the ringside announcer, but actually he kind of is more involved in things that he lets on? That's a side note for the folks on Patreon. Anyway, back to Muhammad. I mean, he can't say no to this opportunity, right, to fight Leon Edwards, but is he ready for it? And is it a good decision for him?
I mean, John, I did wear the Montreal Screwjob shirt today, right? So I've got that for later on in the show. That was the whole point of it. Maybe John Anik does have he's playing the strings behind the scenes. But I mean, yeah, you can't say no to this opportunity. And for Belal Muhammad, you have to kind of look at it. Well, Khamzat Chimaev, what does he do well? Well, he's got hands and he's got one punch knockout power. But what's his bread and butter? It's his grappling. Belal Muhammad has shown marked improvements over his career in his hands. You go back and watch that fight with Diego Lima. I would have thought, man, Diego Lima is going to either outstruck Belal Muhammad or Belal Muhammad's just going to wet blanket like he always does and really stifle the offense of Diego Lima. What did Belal Muhammad do? He went out there and cracked with him and he threw his hands. And then when he had to slow the pace of the fight down, he could, but he has that cardio that just lasts. So I love the fight for Belal Muhammad. I think it's a great one. It's almost like a 1A, 1B, and I don't really know who's A and who's B between Edwards and Muhammad, but I think it's an awesome fight. And exactly, you take this fight, you look at Belal Muhammad so far in the UFC. Let's do that. So we go through the record. He fought with Titan until 2016. He had obviously some time, with different promotions. But you look at it, he comes in the OC, loses to Alan Jouban, beats Augusto Montano, loses to Vicente Luque, gets knocked out, wins 4 in a row, loses to Jeff Neal. He's won 4 in a row now, but the names aren't big names like Tim Means, Jordan Meehan, Randy Brown, Curtis Millender, Lyman Good. For Belal Muhammad, he's been in the 25 to 15 range the whole time he's been in the UFC. He's fought all those names that but he's been ranked at points too. But he's never really had that big statement win. Him beating Diego Lima and beating him up on the feet really showed a lot of people, hey, this guy really has great potential and he continues to gain on his game. So I think win or lose against Leon Edwards, perfect move for Belal Muhammad. It really cements your place in that division as long as you don't get, knocked out in the first round or you get taken down and ragdolled. So I think it's a great move for Belal Muhammad. It's high risk and it's fairly low reward. Just like, again, we talked about it, but when Masvidal fought Usman, it was high risk. I think he kind of blew everything after the fact and some of the stuff that he's done since. But for Belal Muhammad, great opportunity.
I agree. And I was going to reference the Masvidal fight with Usman as well because, if he loses, anytime you lose a fight on short notice, you always have short notice as the excuse. So he has that built-in excuse. I'm interested to see if, we're going to get into a little bit of this later about the UFC and their handling of Khamzat Chimaev. Does matching Edwards up with a grappler give Chimaev a little bit of I don't want to say tape on him, but does that help Chimaev maybe scout him a little bit? And, if Edwards wins, Chimaev can still see some opportunities there. I don't know. I don't want to get that far into the tinfoil game of the UFC is really trying to groove things for Chimaev. But I think, like you said, it's a great opportunity for Muhammad. And if he can beat Edwards, it sets him up for a fight with Chimaev. So he could just go ahead and take, on the one hand, he could take Chimaev's place by getting the opportunity. He could also take Edwards' place by winning and then put himself in a much more high profile. He's already got a pretty high profile podcast that he does. So, I mean, he's a guy who really could gain a lot. We talk all the time about who could be the next Jorge Masvidal. I don't know that he has the personnel.
Could be the guy with the law degree in the welterweight division, right?
There you go.
All right, John, let's move on. I apologize for cutting you off, but Dominick Cruz talked to Ariel Helwani this week, and he actually had a lot to say. He talked about his placement on the prelims. He talked about the UFC's interest in Henry Cejudo coming back, and he touched on the loss of Cejudo again and stayed true to his belief that Keith Peterson was not entirely there on fight night. John, of all the things that Cruz said, what do you think is the most relevant and impactful from that interview?
Well, it's a tie between, really quickly, the thing about the prelims was he just said, I'm not attached to my ego like I once was. Fighting on the prelims is no big deal for me. Cejudo coming back, he said that Cejudo is not as big of a star that he thinks he is, and the type of money he's asking for, he doesn't generate, so it's going to be a stalemate for some time. And the Keith Peterson thing he said in the back, I was trying to talk to Keith Peterson, and I had to, ask him to repeat the rules to me, and he wasn't making eye contact with me and didn't seem like he was all there. Now, so 2 huge claims levied there. One against Keith Peterson is that all that seems to be true, and Dominick Cruz isn't a guy that I've seen really be reckless with the truth in the time that I've known him, I've known of him, he mostly is pretty straight down the middle with what he believes and what he thinks he sees. So, and he works for ESPN. He's a big guy in the UFC. It's not mentioned a lot, but he's a really big deal in the UFC. So if he has a problem with Keith Peterson, there's a problem with Keith Peterson. Now, as far as the Cejudo thing, I think that he might be angling for a rematch. So he's saying that to get Cejudo back and kind of minimize him and keep that fight as a relevant fight. But he does bring up an interesting point of how badly does the UFC want or need Henry Cejudo. I think that they need him. I think they want him, but I don't think they need him.
I think the most interesting thing out of all of this is the one that you didn't cover. The fact that he basically justified his placement on the prelims by saying that more people tune into the prelims than the main card. Well, yeah, I mean, you think people would sooner pay $70 or watch it on TV that they already pay for? Of course. You see the numbers week in and week out. I mean, the prelims of most fight nights draw more than the main cards. Sometimes. I guess I should have said pay-per-view. But normally, the prelims, the appetizer, you get more, and then people kind of do whatever they decide to do until Dana White finds them, and then he's got you, motherfucker. But to me, it's really Dominick Cruz kind of justifying that. You know what? Have me on the prelims. I guess that's a good one. I guess that's a good one. I mean, I would think a guy like Dominick Cruz, John, if he's on the pay-per-view, the actual pay-per-view, and he's a former champion, wouldn't he make more money? We're not talking about that. We're just going to leave that one behind closed doors and let the agent deal with it.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think you're right.
It's kind of weird.
I think here's the thing. I think that you make a good point, which is to say that if I have reduced you to being a prelim fighter, and all due respect to prelim fighters, but Dominick Cruz was a headliner at once. If I've reduced you to being a prelim fighter, then how much can you really say you can justify the amount of money you want? So yeah, I'm with you. All right, Craig. Speaking of things that have been on Fight Pass, much like UFC prelims, if you see Shannon Knapp on Zillow, no need to fear. She's not moving, but her promotion is. Invicta's longtime partnership with the UFC Fight Pass is coming to an end. For their part, Invicta has said they have an announcement coming about their new broadcasting home. Craig, do you think that Invicta will find a better home than UFC Fight Pass?
No. So I've been sitting here, I haven't done the research on this, so I'll let that be known. But, you try to think of where could you go? Well, there's Fight TV, right? That's probably not a terrible place, but the only trouble with Fight TV, they have a new subscription. It's Fight TV Plus. You can kind of watch certain content. You don't have to pay. I think it's $50 a year, but you still have to buy certain pay-per-views, which kind of sucks. Maybe they end up there. Who else? Access TV. They used to have the LFA. Maybe end up there. Like, there's a couple of different avenues. I just don't see anything that has the drawing power of Fight Pass. Now, Fight Pass is the home of fights. It's the home of kung fu movies. It's the home of comedy specials. Like, I don't even know if Fight Pass knows what it wants to be at this point. It's just like Disney Plus. Disney Plus has, Stars on there now? And there's like adult content on Disney Plus. Disney, what are we doing here? I don't know what the UFC is doing with Fight Pass anymore. To me, it's a shame that you lose Invicta. Because I look at it, most Friday nights, I'm sitting at home. I'm doing more tape study for the next day for question mark kicks. I'm getting ready for the weekend, and I'm getting ready for our picks that we tape usually on Sunday, sometimes on Monday. All that being said, I have Twitter open the whole time. And 9 times out of 10, it's always the same people that I follow on Twitter that are posting about either an Invicta show or an LFA show or something that's on Fight Pass. Very rarely, and I mean, we had it in the last couple of weeks, like when Paige Van Zandt fought a feeling. There was a couple different cards on at the same time, and a lot of people were paying for bare knuckle. And that night, it was either bare knuckle or you were watching, Barstool Sports there. I Want to Fight Robbie Fox. They were watching, I can't even remember, Rough and Rowdy. That's it. But yeah, to me, it's a shame. And I can't really think of where a better home would be. Like, what do? Do you end up on the PFL's new OPP platform? I don't know. It's tricky.
It is. Yeah, I think that there's a way that this goes really well, and there's a way that it goes predictably. Really well would be some content provider wants to get into business, and you go on this thing that's insane that you would be on. Like, if for some reason Netflix wants to get into sports, and you're their entry into it, or the more likely scenario would be something like Amazon Prime. let's say Amazon Prime wanted to get into sports. Invicta would not. You could do worse than getting into business with Invicta, and Amazon Prime has endless pockets. So that would be interesting. But yeah, I think where it gets really, really interesting in this thing is there's so many content providers, so many now. So how does this open up for Invicta is interesting to see.
There's so many content providers. You could end up on Nickelodeon, right? Because I mean, the NFL did, so Invicta could end up there. But like, I look at this too as, okay, so you're off of Fight Pass. How many contracts back and forth between Invicta and the UFC as far as fighters are concerned? It's a huge pipeline to the UFC. So do you align yourself now with Bellator, with the PFL? Do you align yourself with one championship? Like, is there still going to be a good relationship between the UFC and Invicta? Like, there's layers to this.
There is layers to this, and what you brought up there is really, really crucial, is that Invicta could end up being the thing that makes Bellator more relevant in women's fighting. If all of a sudden Bellator and Invicta are doing co-promoted events, now they have now that takes care of two problems.
On Showtime?
Now it takes care of two problems. Number one, you have a women's division, and number two, Invicta has a home for their content. So, and you know what's funny? If I was Bellator, I don't know that I would buy them. I think I'd let them stay Invicta and co-promote, even if it's still under the same umbrella.
It's fair enough. I'm excited about that, John. Dana White's bastard son, Sage Northcutt, is back. He's over in one championship, and in case you stopped caring when he left the UFC, he's coming off an injury, and his first fight back in 2 years is Shinya Aoki. How crazy is that? Now, on paper, John, this seems like a pretty ridiculous bit of matchmaking. So I ask you this. What do you think of this fight?
I don't think that it is a game changer for either fighter necessarily. I think that under normal circumstances, let's just put it like this. I think Sage is in way over his head. I know Aoki's been around forever. I know he's closer to my age than he is to your age. And I think that, from that perspective, that can be problematic. If he's not training the way you need to train, even to fight a guy like Sage Northcutt, if you're not training at that high level, you can get caught like anybody else. We know Sage is going to come in fit. We know he's going to come in ready. The question is, how much technique does he have, right? So if you're Aoki and you're not coming ready, you could have a problem on your hands. But I tend to believe, and this is no disrespect to Sage Northcutt, that Shinya Aoki could sleepwalk through a fight like this. If he's fit.
Yep.
If he's fit, he could sleepwalk through a fight like this, but he has to be in shape.
He's 37 years old, and of his wins, 30 of them by submission. And you look at the list of names, and it's insane. Like, I look at the losses too. Like, he lost to Christian Lee in 2019. Christian Lee's like a powerhouse of a superstar. You know, the whole Lee family of Angela. You have the younger sister that's coming into MMA now too. Ben Askren, Edward Foliang, really good fighter in 2016. Eddie Alvarez, 2012. Like, Shinya Aoki's the real deal. And it doesn't matter if he's 37 or 27. Like, this is a tough fight. One championship is setting this guy up to fail. Putting him up against Cosmo Alexandre, like, that wasn't fair. Why would you even do that? Like, that's cruel. So I don't necessarily love it. I don't like it for poor Sage. I mean, think of it though. Long-term repercussions. You fight Shinya Aoki. What's going to happen? He goes home with your leg. Like, so, I mean, from that perspective, like, you're not going to get brutally knocked out and put on a poster by a Brazilian powerhouse. But like, yeah, it's a tricky one. Poor Sage.
I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room here, which is some of the matchmaking with Sage, like you just said, from this perspective. And tell me if you disagree. You could throw cans at Sage Northcutt, and most MMA fans would be none the wiser. If you threw some lower ranked, if you threw the equivalent of a Contender Series level fighter at Sage Northcutt, but the fighter is Asian, you're going to tell me most casual MMA fans would know that guy was a Contender Series level guy? Probably not. So I think that they could be doing him a lot more favors than they're doing him. But, we'll have to see. I don't know. I'm with you. I think that they're not doing him favors. But at some point, this kid has to become what well, let me make sure I put this the right way. If he's going to be great or even good, when does it start? I mean, I know he's young. I get that. He's 24, but like, when does that, what's that thing that lets me know, listen, the Zach Otto win was an impressive win, but
no, it wasn't. That
you don't
fight
think
was
so?
terrible. No, the fight sucked.
I mean, I'm saying you don't think that's
no,
as an opponent?
No.
Really?
Listen, I respect Zach Otto. I think he's a very good fighter, but you're like, you look at the fights that Sage Northcutt had in the UFC, and I get out of it, but let's bring up Sage Northcutt really quick. This makes for good viewing and listening. So Sage Northcutt, I know he came into the UFC in 2015, right? You look at the losses. I know Brian Barberena, Mickey Gall, and obviously Cosmo. So let's look at the wins in the UFC. He beat Francisco Trevino, who was 39. He beat Cody Pfister. He beat Enrique Martin, Michelle Quinones, Thibaut Goudy, Zach Otto. And again, like and respect Zach Otto, pure Vita BJJ guy. You see him corner a lot of fighters. No longer in the UFC, fighting for caged aggression. Does he not own that promotion? I know he owns a promotion or he works with a promotion. But I mean, like, yeah, if you look at his record, and again, I don't want to throw salt. I just want to, like, he beat Josh Berkman by split decision in 2016. Kichi Kunimoto by split, beat Mike Pyle. Wasn't that Mike Pyle's retirement fight? He beat Dwight Grant by split in the most boring fight I've ever seen in my life. So again, did Sage here's what I would say. Again, no shade to Zach Otto. I think he's a good fighter. But you look at Sage Northcutt's win. Did he ever beat anybody that was ranked? No. Did he ever have a huge statement win? Well, early on, but they gave him like wins. They gave him, easier paths to victory. Then he goes over to one championship. And Sage, what? Didn't he used to make 55? And then he was really a guy that was at 70? And then you fight Cosmo Alexandre, that's a middleweight, and he knocks your head clean off your body. Like, what? Why would you do that? Does that seem smart? You invest all this. Now, again, it's like the UFC bringing Ben Askren in. Did you set him up to fail? I don't know. But they set Sage Northcutt up to fail. Why do you think you haven't seen him in 2 years? What do you do when you're Sage Northcutt?
It's tough. I mean, this is. I don't want to say it's a make or break fight, but I mean, I will say this: any ground that he's lost over the last couple of years, he can make up in this fight. So I don't know if that's what they're trying to do, but if he wants to get back on, I mean, if you're looking for him to get a high profile win, this is it. So I don't like the matchup, but in terms of resurrecting Sage Northcutt's career, it would definitely accomplish that goal.
Live on TNT.
Live on TNT. All right, Craig, let's move on to sparring sessions. Craig, I want to talk about Khamzat Chimaev and his bout with COVID. I said that with a smile, not because I'm happy that Khamzat Chimaev has COVID, but I was thinking about what we're going to talk about later, which is Kevin Holland's whole take on this, him having COVID on Rogan. So I'm just going to read this straight from the, I think this might have been SureDog. According to a report from ESPN, the UFC is flying the welterweight prospect into Las Vegas to receive additional medical care. Chimaev was forced to withdraw from March 13th headlining clash with Leon Edwards due to ongoing symptoms from the coronavirus. The goal is for Chimaev to fight in June, but his long-term health will be primary concern. Last week, his manager said that he thought Chimaev was going to die. After a training session, he was really bad. He didn't even do 2 rounds straight. He did 1 round, then rested. He started coughing, started feeling ill. We had to cancel training. So, Craig, with all that being said, here's what the sparring session is about. We want this kid to get the best possible care he can. This is not about that. But if you're another fighter on the roster who had or has COVID, do you think the UFC is going to go to all these links for you? And if not, does that bother you?
This makes the news, and it should, because this should be like a cautionary tale. Be careful. Go to every length you personally can to, protect yourself, your loved ones, friends and family, so on and so forth. It's a shame to see a young fighter with such a bright star. And it's not like it's faded away. But for him, I mean, yeah, he can't compete. He can't do what he loves. And for him, it's entertaining the fans at home at this point in time. But it's a shame that we can't see Khamzat Chimaev fight. And, you wish the best for him. I remember talking about this a long time ago in the show. You talk about meal prep, right? Let's make that an example, John. And I'm not going to go on a faraway tangent. But if you want to take part in the UFC's meal prep program, you pretty much have to be in Vegas, do you not? to really get the full gamut of what's involved.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
You pretty well have to be there. So if you're a fighter from up here in Canada and you want all of the free meals and all the perks that come with it, well, you're kind of on your own. How many fighters and corners and coaches and managers and all this have either had an issue with an illness, had an issue with COVID, and we haven't heard about it at all? I'm sure there's people out there that we haven't heard about them at all.
Yeah.
So this is high profile. But yeah, I bet, if there's a fighter out there that, they had about a COVID, they lost a fighter, because again, Casey O'Neill's a good example. Casey O'Neill had signed to fight Lauren Murphy, or thought she was going to sign to fight Lauren Murphy, had a positive COVID test. It didn't make the news. Like, nobody really heard a whole lot about it. And then she's booked to fight Shayna Dobson months and months later. How many fighters do you think that's happened to? And we haven't heard about it whatsoever. So, again, you don't want to go full tinfoil hat, but again, you wish nothing but the best for Khamzat, but I'm sure it probably does irk some fighters a little bit. And then on the flip side, you can look at it as, well, hey, the UFC is giving everybody plenty of opportunities to take fights. We've seen fighters skyrocket like Khamzat in a time like this, where bang, bang, a few fights, you put them together, an impressive performance, you skyrocket your career. And it's unfortunate that the other fighters can't fight, but there was a spot available and fighter A, fighter B took it, and look at them now. But yeah, overall, it's a tricky situation for sure.
I don't want to disrespect any fighter in saying this, but I will. I want to equate this to cars. And if you have a old Mustang GT, right, and you restored it and it looks beautiful, you bought it at, they do Barrett Jackson car auctions here. You buy it at Barrett Jackson, and then you have just like a Honda Civic, right? You're going to treat that Mustang different than you treat that Honda Civic. Some fighters need to realize, I hate to say it, guys, you're Honda Civics, okay? And Khamzat Chimaev is a Ford Mustang GT, and he is an investment that Dana White thinks there is going to be a huge return on that investment. So when he flies Khamzat Chimaev in to get medical attention, it's not because he loves the kid. It's not because he's fostered some great relationship with him. It's not because of anything other than Khamzat Chimaev's future as a fighter is more relevant to the UFC than maybe even Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards had COVID as well. So, I mean, maybe it wasn't as severe. Side note, I want you guys to really notice this, because I've been watching not Joe Rogan in and of itself, but I've been watching clips here and there and his take on the whole COVID thing, right? Obviously, Joe and I think differently about COVID. But my one interesting thing about Rogan is he has this devil's advocate stance that he takes, and whatever you say, he's kind of going to take the other to make an interesting argument. But no matter what his stance is on COVID throughout this, right? Like, I'm not wearing masks, I'm not getting the vaccine. He said all this stuff. When he interviewed Kevin Holland, and we'll get to this in a second, Kevin Holland was really pushing back against how bad Chimaev really has it with having COVID. And Rogan was like, well, I hear it's pretty bad, and you might have had a more mild version. I'm like, you're the guy that says COVID's not that big of a deal. And here's Kevin Holland telling a fighter to shake it off. And so anyway, that's a side note. But I guess my point is that people need to understand that that Khamzat Chimaev, and listen, this hurts to hear, even if you're Khamzat Chimaev, he's an investment. And all Dana White's doing by flying him to get medical attention here and there and everywhere is protecting his investment. The rules, the UFC is a promotion, not a team, but the rules are different for James Harden than they are for the 12th guy on the bench. That's why we're seeing all this stuff in the NBA about guys having rules. Kawhi does this and Harden does that. And the rules are different for Khamzat Chimaev.
The rules are different.
All right, Craig, let's move on to For the Gram. I want to talk about Kevin Holland. He went on the Joe Rogan Experience on Thursday and said a lot. I mean, he is nicknamed Big Mouth after all. One of the things he said was that Khamzat Chimaev isn't about that life if he couldn't push through COVID. His quote is, you stood up here and say it's sad because he has COVID and shit like that, but they said I had COVID and we're supposed to be athletes, and it's like, get the fuck over it. Rogan then suggested Holland may have been affected by a more mild version of the virus than Chimaev. My girl had it pretty good, and I was fucking her the whole time, Holland said. So it's like we all take it different. Different fighters, different heart. Don't claim to have that heart if you ain't got it. Shit, the flu sucks. Michael Jordan still went out there and won. Difference. Craig?
Did he, though?
That's a pretty wild statement, but here's the question. Does the fact that this hasn't been picked up more broadly make any kind of statement on Holland's star power?
Like, are you throwing shade at Kevin Holland by asking that question? Because it feels like you are.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, is it worse that I would throw shade at him for what he said, or just the fact that he's not famous enough for him to get in any trouble on it? So it's up to you. What do you think?
I mean, come on, man. Like, I watched Kevin Holland interview on What the Heck with friend of the show, Mike Heck, who hosts another show that used to be on Between the Links. See what I did there? That used to be, and then I threw the name in there. And you froze up on my screen. Now I got you back. So I'm glad that I do, because I watched Mike interview Kevin Holland right after his fight, got rebuffed with the Jack Hermanson fight or the Marvin Vettori fight. Anyway, he was between fights and he ended up with Jacare. So it was before that time, right after he had the positive COVID test. And he was like, look, listen, I wasn't taking the necessary precautions. From here on out, I'm going to be more careful. Kind of messed up on an opportunity. Then he beat Jacare, and it's like, man, screw that noise, right? So don't be talking out of both sides of your mouth on this one. Shoot it straight, man. Because, listen, I haven't had it. I mean, you haven't had it. But I've been pretty diligent about this stuff. And listen, I'm fortunate. I come from a part of the world where we haven't been widely affected by it, and everybody's been kind of clamped down, locked down. And for the most part, people follow the rules, especially in my own province anyway. Don't throw this on Chimaev. This isn't because he's weak. You know what? He uses Chimaev as an example. Why didn't he use Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov as an example? Why didn't he do that?
Because he doesn't want to fight with him.
Yeah.
That's why. So I get it. Listen, okay, real quick. I think that anytime that you have anything to do medically, right, and it goes better than expected, you should just be happy and move on, right? For example, I got the second COVID vaccine shot yesterday. Everybody says it's a killer. I've been feeling okay the last couple of days. Now I've taken, some Tylenol and things like that, but I consider myself fortunate. It's not like, oh, this isn't that bad. Everybody else is, doesn't make everyone else a pussy because things go well for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think that he should rethink the way that he's presenting this. All right, let's move on to one Twitter hitter. Julian Marquez and Miley Cyrus. Craig, Julian Marquez shot his shot with Miley Cyrus. Then he may have fumbled the bag. I'm 43 and talking like that, which is its own problem. But if you need a refresher, guys, here it is. Miley Cyrus, will you be my Valentine? That was Marquez's move. Miley Cyrus said, shave an MC into your chest hair, and I am yours. Happy V-Day and congrats, my love, to which Marquez replied, if you get a henna tattoo that says Cuban Missile Crisis above your belly button like Tupac, then I'm yours. This kid's getting dragged for missing his one shot at Miley Cyrus. So I ask you, how do you feel about the way Marquez handled the situation?
John, we've all been there in high school when we thought we were that it. And, we had that opportunity. I found out at the end of high school that the girl that I liked the whole time liked me back. Didn't know it. Flubbed all those chances. We've all been there, John. So male, female, whoever it is, we've all had missteps. But I never had it unfold on Twitter for the entire world to see. He flubbed it, and he could have handled it better. Maybe you try and do something behind closed doors, but also don't make those DMs public. Maybe you don't call for a fight with Diego Sanchez and then put it out for the world like Connor did.
Now, in fairness to him, I will say this. He said that they're DMing. He said they're buddies now. He said he was going to date her anyway, which is true. He was never going to date her anyway. So here's the question. Do you embarrass yourself for someone you're not going to get anyway? Like, that makes no sense. So now he's got MC carved into his chest, and he's still not going to hook up with her. So what the hell was the point? I think you keep the high ground as far as being a G, and then you just let yourself, let the chips. She's either going to respect play or she's not. You're not going to get her either way. All right.
No.
Right, moving on to posting to the book. George Foreman thinks Conor McGregor can beat Manny Pacquiao. The quote was, I'd rather see him in boxing matches now. Foreman said about McGregor, if McGregor has a fight with Pacquiao, he can actually beat him. Good rules, over 10 rounds. McGregor can beat him. He's already adjusted to boxing. He's not doing good in MMA anymore. Pacquiao is very good, as a matter of fact. McGregor can beat him in a boxing match. Craig, your thoughts?
John, let's go quick. See what I'm doing here? Yeah, no. Conor McGregor's not going to beat Manny Pacquiao in the fight. It will never happen in our lifetimes.
I agree. I mean, I think this is George Foreman trying to steal some clout here and get back into relevance by mentioning these two guys. I wouldn't mind seeing Conor McGregor fight Manny Pacquiao, but I don't. I'm a poster. I'm a fight weigh-in guy. I get excited for big fights. These guys are two big fighters. The fight between Conor and Pacquiao will probably be closer than the fight between Conor and Mayweather. I watched that one, so I probably watched the other one. Yeah.
Send us out on a high note, John.
Let's do it. So nothing really on the flurry this week. Let's start the conversation. MMA Reddit, shouts to them. I want to talk about absence making the heart grow fonder with fight promotion. Craig, I think we've talked about this before. By now, I mean, we've talked about everything in these start to conversations, but it's maybe time to revisit with all this TJ, Dominick, Dan Hardy, GSP, Khabib talk. Do you think time away helps a fighter or hurts a fighter in terms of marketing himself?
Let me answer it quick, and then we'll throw it over to r/MMA. Great friends of Fight Night Picks, the Underground Whisper Network. I think that the heart makes long distance makes the heart grow fonder. Stick away. Like the time away helps.
I agree, especially if you were something special before. I think TJ was what TJ was. I think that, the more time away we forget about the EPO stuff. Dan Hardy, I'll be honest with you, I was all prepared to drag Dan Hardy about this comeback. Then I looked at his record. Not too bad. He went out on wins. He wasn't taking murderers row on, but I mean, he went out beating like Amir Sadala, which surprised me. And usually when you retire, I think he had a medical thing, but usually when you retire, you don't go out like that. GSP could be, that's a story for another day. All right, Craig, the fight has been stopped. We'll see you next week. Craig can be followed at Craig Allen FNP. I can be followed at SM Cornerman. Craig, say something witty.
Let's get into it.